Hey y'all, let's get into a data review from the East Roundnet Series Championship. This was the 8th Christmas Classic, and I had the privilege of getting to run a lot of stuff behind the scenes and also dive in on the data. So, just for background, what was this event? This capped off the 2024 East Roundnet Series in Pennsylvania. It's where we've been capping off our tournament series for the last couple of years, and we'll continue to do so. It's a lot of fun, and it's a beautiful indoor venue we get to play at. Right by Hershey Park too, and speaking of Hershey and chocolate things, there's lots of really good milk and chocolate milk in the area. So yes, we played lots around it. There's also lots of chocolate milk. If you don't know, sorry you missed out. Hopefully you can enjoy it next year or sometime soon. And for this event specifically, a couple things went into it. We're going to mostly focus on rules, but I do want to highlight the structure was a little bit unique in that we used two-phase pool structure. Anybody who followed the world structure would probably know the general idea of having multiple levels of pools. So we did a bit of seeding going into that. You can read more about that in the event email if you want to go back and look at that. And then also we had a bracket tiered with people getting buys. Kind of just added a lot more incentive to having clear stakes throughout each round of pool play, as well as bracket play having clear stakes where teams that did worse weren't eliminated but had a really narrow path to victory. So you can follow that all on Flango if you want to look more at that. But let's jump into the specific rule stuff here, where we were using the 2025 US baseline for their rules, and we were also experimenting with a couple of things that have just been floating around in the community. This is not like a formal IRF rules testing event, but we took some ideas that have been floating around just in discussions around the 2-foot no hit zone, a no drop zone for 7 feet, and allowing people to have instant replay review. And of course, equipment wise, we also used a premier spike set and a weighted net there for stability. And then we had the heavier and bigger spike ball rally balls. I'll talk more about those another time, but just for the sake of this video, let's keep things rolling. How did it go? It went pretty well. But as far as what really comes down to is, what was going on. And I did a little video touching on how to think about, just data and testing in Roundnet. And I used some STS championship data for that. So if you want to go look at that video, jump back to that one. But just for reference, there were 18 games that I used in that data set across 9 matches. And from this experimental data, we've got 22 games from 10 matches of the East Roundnet Series Championship. So that's just, baseline for comparison. And going into that, we look at first points played. So again, on the left-hand side, we've got the baseline, 766 points played. On the right-hand side, 839 points played. And you can notice some very quick things. Double faulting was down 11.5%, generally a good thing. Aces were down about 7%. That's solid. Holds were up just over 13%. That's kind of what happens when you double fault less. And then rallies notably up were about 6%. So all generally positive directional things, but yeah, obviously when it comes to the benchmarks that the IRF has set, not hitting the threshold for rallies, which is kind of the only real thing I think that matters. If you can hit the rally percentage, I think a lot of these other numbers will fall into place. You'd be hard pressed to have a rally above 25% and then double faults to not hit the threshold being below 25%, which is what the IRF has set out there. So that was points played. Of course, just for comparison, I wanted to give you guys insight onto what it looks like for every service attempt. So more serves attempted, right? If you fault your first serve and second serve, that's going to count as 2 service attempts, but only 1 point. And so from the STS championship on the left, more than half of all instances we had a serve getting missed. On the right-hand side, really big progress there. I'm not going to do the mental math on all the ups and downs. I'll let you guys pause the screen and look at that. But good to see that generally speaking, people were making more of their serves. Just anecdotally, when I was doing data entry and just capturing video on all the matches from the East Roundnet Series Championship, I just noticed a lot more first serves were put in play. And I think that was really cool that people were basically not swinging for the fences and just going for aces all the time. They were putting the ball in play with the attitude that they could get more defensive breaks, and they proved that by getting more defensive breaks and more rallies generally. So that was cool. This one is a different interpretation of things, but I'll come back to it in a second. This is the baseline data, 1,000, 1,100 serves from the championship, the STS championship, and just comparing here, we can see a small shift to the right. It's not massive, but look at the number 4, 5. We see that more points are being played out, being held, and then there's more touches initially on the first touches of possession, which is really good, encouraging. But this is just a different way of expressing what we saw on the former page here, right? Where you see the 50% of serves, 42% of missed serves, and similarly, how many service attempts are going to be just 0 touches versus the test version of things. So a lot of good movement there. You want to see things move to the right. Notably, off to the side here, There's a couple points that don't show up for both of them, but generally speaking, when you think about the number 10, that kind of implies there's 4 changes of possession, where the first serve, that's 1 touch, and then 4 implies bump set spike for 2 possession put away, 7 implies 3, and 4 is 4 or more, 10 would be 4 or more. And so looking at the baseline data, only 2.5% roughly of serves were 10 plus touches, and the experimental data and why it felt like not only were there more rallies, but there were more of these longer points, because a rally for the IRF is just going to be that 7 threshold, but getting to 10 and having things be a little bit more dynamic was really just fruitful to see. To share briefly this play here as an example of what's happening. So this is a 10 touch possession, right? That's the 4th touch by Gabe. Will gets the 5th touch there with his foot. Dan sets it up. Will puts on that 7, 8 by Mike, 9 from Gabriel, and then 10 by Mike put away. And so that's a quick example of like a play that, you know, for anybody that's watching, there's more action happening. You've got the quick touches. There's the rundown too. All in all, like a fair bit more exciting than, you know, the average play. So seeing more than double that many points from the experimental data is awesome. That's really encouraging. But as far as what takeaways you actually get from all this data, of course, a lot of it's in the eye of the beholder. I think the biggest things that I noted, and I'm sure there's more limitations here too, is first off, the player's not the same. I will say one player was the same, Gabriel Fanaki. He won both of these tournaments, so congrats for being, you know, just a top player. But most of the players were not the same players. We had a lot of really good players at the East Roundnet Championship. There were, you know, more of an international presence at the Spikeball Tour Series Championship, so that level of play, that caliber of play was definitely higher in the control data. You know, it's good to see the highest possible level of players trying to break this game, break the sport. And as far as I see things, I felt like players didn't actually play with the best strategy in mind overall. Just defensive schemes, offensive schemes I thought were not as strong as they could have been. They didn't really take full advantage of breaking the rule set. Number 2, playing conditions, pretty obvious. Playing indoors in a heated space versus playing outdoors, you know, under the lights, there's wind outdoors, all those things changed. Obviously the stakes, it's hard to get perfect. This is like emblematic of most studies like this, where you can't pay everyone like millions and millions of dollars and then have, you know, different situations that are all the same. So stakes, I think, is something we won't be able to control perfectly, but I wanted to acknowledge it. And then of course, calibration, you know, for the STS championship, people were practicing for that for months and months. You could really say years. And obviously a lot of the skills are transferable. But for this tournament, really, there were only a couple of months for players to begin practicing. I will say a huge shout out to Mike Garrett. I feel like Mike, with a lot of the Lemon Lads and New Jersey Roundnet crew, that crew, from my understanding, was practicing a fair bit of this rule set. So it did show that like he got calibrated to the rule set and then he played better than everybody, at least relative to, you know, Mike Garrett is not a, generally a pro level Roundnet player, but he put on a pro level performance at this event. And that was really impressive. So that calibration, also figuring out how much time does it take people to get adjusted to this rule set. And over the course of the tournament, you know, did the beginning of the tournament games, early bracket play, are those as impressive if you have rallies in those as in the finals and semifinals? Because, you know, the calibration varies. And I think those are all valid questions to consider, just thinking about limitations. And so, you know, I don't have any like major conclusions. Like we tested a rule set. I was really happy that people had a good time doing it. There was generally a really positive attitude towards it. Of course, everyone wants to try different things right now, which is important. So having more testing and more patience around that is going to be really critical to move the needle forward. And of course, if you're watching this video right now, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope if you're not already subscribed, please do. And if you are subscribed, consider sharing this video and other videos like it with a friend to get thinking more about Roundnet, because ultimately what Roundnet needs is we need more contributors, right? Like I put this whole little, you know, report together and, you know, less than a week's worth of work. Like I took some breaks on and off, but like, you know, the tournament was a week ago, a little over a week ago, and I'm putting this video out for you all to enjoy. And yeah, I'm not that special. I just work hard. So I think if more people are just putting in effort, whether it is conducting testing, whether it is doing the data entry, like I've, you know, shared those tutorials on, or whether it's just getting more people excited and engaged on these things and organizing community around change and progress, Roundnet's going to do better for it. And that's not just specific to experimenting with rules. That's specific to the entire sport. It's, you know, I could go on and on with that stuff. And I'll probably leave like a couple more linked cards here if you want to check out those types of videos from the year. But otherwise, thanks for watching this little recap of the test data. And all I've got to say otherwise is there's a lot of ways to cut this data up, and I'm happy to answer more questions. I didn't want to belabor it. So if you've got more questions on data, how I approach this, any other like thought process stuff, definitely let me know, because I don't know what I don't know. And I'm curious what questions you guys are exploring when it comes to data, experimentation, rule sets, all that jazz. So keep me posted, and I will see you all in the next thing.